Ms. Shadeen.
Could you please introduce yourself to the jury, spelling your first and last name?
Yes, my name is Angie Christensen. Angie is spelled A-N-G-I. Christensen is C-H-R-I-S-T-E-N-S-E-N.
And where do you work now?
I work at the FBI laboratory in Quantico, Virginia.
And what is your position there?
I work there as a forensic anthropologist.
And what is a forensic anthropologist?
A forensic anthropologist is a scientist who studies the human skeleton in forensic contexts.
How long have you been a forensic anthropologist?
I've been with the FBI laboratory since 2004, so just about 20 years.
Did you work as a forensic anthropologist in any other capacity before joining the FBI lab?
I assisted with a couple of cases as a graduate student.
Can you tell us about your education, training, and experience that puts you in a position to serve as a forensic anthropologist with the FBI lab?
I have a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and a PhD, all in the area of anthropology. I'm also board certified by the American Board of Forensic Anthropology and the Forensic Anthropology Society of Europe.
When you conduct forensic anthropology work in a case, how do you first get involved in the case? How does it come to you?
To the FBI laboratory,
Yeah.
But the case flow process is that all evidence is first received by our evidence management unit, and they read the incoming documentation and inspect the packaging and make sure everything is in place and in order, and then they prepare that evidence for delivery and examination by the scientists.
Now, before that ever happens, do the agents in the field have to send you a request to do some work in the first place?
Whoever is requesting the examination will send a letter documenting what that request is and that they're requesting lab examinations.
And does that letter bear the FBI's case number?
Yes, if it's an FBI case, then it will, yes.
And does the lab then assign its own case number?
Yes, in addition to the FBI case file number, the laboratory will assign an FBI laboratory number.
And did you conduct some forensic anthropology work in connection with the Quinton Simon case arising out of Savannah?
Yes, I did.
What was the FBI case number for that case?
Your Honor, may I refer to a copy of my report? The FBI case number for that case is AT, which stands for our Atlanta field office, 3665337.
And what was the lab number assigned for the work that you did?
The laboratory number assigned was 2022-02600.
And Your Honor, before I forget, I would offer Dr. Christensen as an expert in forensic anthropology. No objection.
All right, thank you.
Sometime in late November, mid to late November, did you first get a request from some agents in Savannah to look at some photographs?
Yes, the first request I received was on October 28, 2022.
And how many photographs did you receive at that time?
That day I received 6 images as well as a bone that was depicted in those images.
Okay. And did you take a look at those photographs, and what were they asking you to tell them about?
The photographs depicted a bone that they wanted me to determine whether it was human or not in origin.
And what day was that again? Did you get that?
The communication was dated October 28 of 2022, and my report is dated October 31 of 2022.
And did you look at that photograph and come to a tentative opinion about whether that bone was human?
Yes, my preliminary conclusion was that bone was non-human in origin.
Did they send that bone up to you in any case?
Yes.
And did you look at it in real life?
Yes, I examined the photos, they submitted the actual bone, and I then directly examined the bone.
Okay. And what was your conclusion at that time?
That the bone was non-human in origin.
And again, that was in late October.
Yes.
Okay. Did you later, sometime in mid to late November, get substantially more photographs of some different remains?
Yes, there were a number of photos submitted in a communication dated November 18.
And how many photographs was that?
These are represented in the laboratory's item numbers 15 through 26, so I believe that's 12 photographs.
Okay. And what were they asking you to tell them about these photographs?
Once again, to determine if I could, based on the photographs, whether the bones depicted were human or non-human in origin.
And what did you opine based on the photographs?
In that case, I did conclude that the images depicted bones that were consistent with human origin.
Now, shortly thereafter, did you receive a box of suspected human remains from the agents in Savannah?
Yes, the laboratory did receive, subsequent to that, physical submissions of some of the material depicted in those photographs.
And what specifically did the lab receive? What did it look like when it got to you?
When it got to me, so this is different than when it was received by the lab. It would have initially been received by the evidence management unit, who then inspected and then sent it to me. I received, in this case, I might refer to my notes just to refresh my memory, one box containing 4 additional paper bags.
And did you examine the contents of those paper bags?
Yes, I did.
And did you photograph the contents of each of those paper bags?
I did.
Your Honor, I'd like to approach with what I've marked as State's Exhibit 78. Do you recognize those images?
Yes.
And what are those images?
These are photographs that I took of the contents of those 4 bags as I received them.
And what was the date of those photographs?
Those photographs are dated November 21 of 2022.
Okay. And is the items in those photographs, is that what the Savannah agents had sent you pictures of a couple days before?
It includes what was depicted in those images, but there's also additional material depicted here.
Your Honor, at this time, I'd like to publish the exhibit by displaying it on the monitor. Now, were these the contents of these bags, or did these bags receive lab individual numbers at the lab?
Yes, they were assigned item numbers by the evidence management unit.
Now, what were the numbers assigned to each of these bags?
Items 27, 28, 29, and 30.
Does this first image here depict the contents of the bag numbered item 27?
Yes.
And what are those numbers we see in the bottom right-hand corner?
In the bottom right, you see the FBI laboratory number, which is 2022-02600. It then says item 27, dated 11/21/22, and to the side, my initials.
Can you tell us what it is that we're looking at here?
This is the photo I took documenting the material as I received it. Upon later examination, I determined this piece of tissue to not contain any skeletal material.
Did you do any further examination of this particular item?
No, because as a forensic anthropologist, I don't examine any of the soft tissues, only the skeleton. So because there was no skeletal material present, I did not conduct any further examinations on this item.
The next slide, slide 2, this is item 28.
Yes,
All right, so this was the contents of another one of the bags.
yes.
Can you describe to us what we're looking at here? What was in that bag?
Again, this is a photograph that I took just documenting the material as I received it. On further examination, I sub-itemized these numbers and examined the bones individually.
And so you did do further analysis of the contents of this bag.
Yes.
Slide 3 is item 29, correct?
That's correct.
And can you describe to us the contents of item 29?
Again, this is a depiction of the material as I received it prior to doing my additional examinations.
Slide 4, not a great picture, but is this item 30?
Yes.
All right, so the fourth bag.
Yes.
Okay. What was in that bag?
This is a combination of soft tissue and skeletal material as it was received by me.
What did it appear to you to be anatomically?
It appears to be a foot, including some of the soft tissue and the bones within.
Once you had received these items and taken them out of the bag and photographed them, what did you do with the items that you did further examination? What was the first step?
As you can see in the images, there's soft tissue and other debris that's adhering to the bones. And my examination is just on the skeletal material. So in order to isolate the bones as well as to clean the surfaces so that I could examine them, I removed any soft tissue and cleaned the bones of any additional debris.
Now, I'd like to ask you some questions about the types of conclusions that you can arrive at as a forensic anthropologist, okay? Are you able to look at a set of bones and determine whether they appear to be of human origin or not?
Yes.
And how do you do that?
It's based on my education and training and experience, in much the same way that you all can probably tell the difference between human and non-human animals. The same is true for their internal structures and bones. So by examining and studying enough human and non-human bones, I can tell the difference between them.
And of the bones you looked at across these 4 items, did you determine that most of them were of human origin?
There were some bones that were of non-human origin and some bones for which I could not determine whether the origin was human or non-human in origin, but most of them were human bones.
And were you able to identify anatomically which bone in the human body you were looking at for the bones of human origin?
Yes.
And did these include a left and right femur?
If I might refer to my report, these are listed by item number and bone name in my report. But yes, there was a left and right femur.
A left and right tibia?
Yes.
Tibia being one of the long bones of the lower leg.
It's the shin bone, yes.
A fibula?
Yes.
That being the other bone of the lower leg?
Yes, it's to the side of your shin bone. It makes up the side of your ankle at the bottom.
Did these bones include part of the right humerus?
Yes.
What is the humerus?
The humerus is the upper arm bone.
And did they include part of a right ulna?
Yes.
What is the ulna?
An ulna is a bone of your forearm on the thumb side.
Did they include a left calcaneus?
Yes.
What is the calcaneus?
A heel bone.
And did they include 5 left ribs?
Yes.
Did they also include a frontal bone?
Yes.
What is the frontal bone?
A frontal bone is the cranial bone right here. It makes up your forehead.
Now, is that visible in slide 3 depicting item 29?
Yes.
Is it the bone in the top right?
Yes.
Did the bones that you identified as of human origin include a right temporal bone?
Yes.
Where is that on the human body?
The temporal bone is near the ear.
And is that visible in item 29 here, or is it in one of the other items?
It's difficult for me to tell from this photograph because of the tissue and debris on the bones in the photograph.
Did the bones that you identified as being of human origin include a left parietal bone?
Yes.
What is a parietal bone?
The parietal bones make up the 2 sides of the cranium.
And did they include various bones from the left foot?
Yes.
When you are looking at bones that you've determined are of human origin, are you able to tell whether they are consistent with being from a human of a particular age range?
Yes, especially for children, looking at the stages of growth and development and taking measurements of the bones, it's possible to tell approximately how old somebody was by looking at their skeleton.
And of the bones that you identified as being of human origin in these 4 items, 27 to 29, did they all appear to be from a human being in the same age range?
Yes, they were all consistent with being from a child aged 1 to 2 years.
And when you're looking at a set of bones that you've identified as being of human origin, are you able to render an opinion as to whether they're all from the same individual, like the same person?
Yes, it's possible to estimate the number of individuals represented. So just based on an inventory of the skeletal material present, if, for example, there were 2 left femurs, I would be able to conclude that there were at least 2 individuals present. In this case, for example, there were no bones that were duplicated that I wouldn't expect to be duplicated in a human skeleton.
So your opinion as to the human bones that you received from the agents in Savannah, that they're, to sum it up, that many of them were of human origin.
Yes.
Those of them were of human origin were from a child 1 to 2 years of age.
Correct.
And a single child.
Correct, yes.
What determinations, let me ask you this, did you observe trauma on any of these bones?
Yes.
And what, if anything, are you able to tell us about when the trauma, well, let's start with not this case, but just a given case. Can you look at a human bone that has signs of trauma, and can you sometimes tell when the trauma occurred relative to death?
Yes. So if there are, trauma refers to any alteration that might happen to a bone. And we can tell if that happened before death, which we call antemortem, if the bone displays any signs of healing. So as soon as you break a bone, your body immediately starts the healing process. So if we see any signs of healing on that bone, we know that it happened before the person died. Perimortem means that the trauma occurred around the time of death. And this is a term that's used a bit differently by medical examiners and pathologists than by anthropologists. So perimortem being around the time of death, typically a pathologist is talking about a very narrow range of time. Anthropologically speaking, because we're only looking at the bones and we're not examining any of the other tissues, all we can tell is what sort of state that bone was in when it was fractured. So in life, the bone has water and collagen, and it's actually a rather flexible material, and it has some give before it breaks. Imagine, for example, you have a fresh green stick and you try to break it. That stick has a good bit of bend before it will actually break. And this differs from a dry stick where if you pick it up and try to bend it, it just snaps. The same thing kind of happens to bone as it dries. So bone that is fractured in a post-mortem condition, so much after the death event when the bone has become dry, it fractures differently than a bone that is fractured in that fresh state. That fresh state we call biomechanically fresh. But that biomechanically fresh state can persist for a long time after death, depending on the conditions of where the body is deposited. So the fractures in a bone will look the same to me if they happen right at the time of death or potentially sometime after death, as long as the bone is still in that biomechanically fresh state.
When you use it, do you ever use the term death event?
Yes.
What does that mean?
That just refers to when that person died, the event of dying.
Is it fair to say that in this case, you cannot attribute any of the trauma to the bones here to the death event?
That's correct.
Is it fair to say that you essentially cannot tell whether any of the trauma to the bones was incurred before this child died versus after?
I can tell that the fractures didn't occur before the time of death because there's no signs of that active healing. So the fractures either occurred around the time of death or after.
Okay. One moment, please. These images that we've been looking at, these are the pictures that you took in your lab?
I took these photos, yes.
Do they fairly and accurately depict the evidence that the lab received from Savannah in late November?
As I received it, yes.
Your Honor, I would introduce this as State's Exhibit 78.
Any objection?
No objection, Your Honor.
Okay, states Exhibit 78 is admitted without objection.
One moment, please. Your Honor. No further questions, Your Honor.